you need to find that sweet spot where your marketing has authenticity and that you can, as a marketer, embody that authenticity in a way that is compelling to your audience. I think it's very easy to get into a formulaic mindset with the way that we communicate to people, especially with the way that we can use generative tools now that essentially will give us 1,000 different templates that we might want. But none of those templates are going to have our personal voice or our personal perspective in there.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. Yeah, let's do this. All right, we hit the button. We're rolling. We're rocking. I'm excited. I can't wait to introduce our guest for today. He's a badass. Let's put it that way. But who is he, Casey? Let me tell you. He is a marketing leader, a thought leader. He's in our CTM community. He's a fellow member of the Breakout Room gang, but he's also in the ed tech. Software. There's so many industries I can talk about, but he's a trailblazer. Growth, brand, demand. Combine it all together like a superhero, like a Voltron superhero. Decades of experience. Co-host of the Filament Games podcast, VP of Marketing and Funding Development at Filament Games, Brandon Pittser. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad you're here. I can't wait to, what you do in your company and all this experience and the fact that you're B2B, B2G, B2, you name it, put a vowel in there and you might be covering for that.
Sure. Any letter.
So I'm just going to ask you the first question, but in order to do that, I have to put on a giant blue foam finger to ask
Okay,
you
here we
this
go.
question. Brandon, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to their market?
All right. So I gave this a lot of thought when you asked
Yes.
me. And I think the answer that I'm going to get put forward is you have to drink your own Kool-Aid.
Boom. Are we not doing that? I mean, Kool-Aid is tasty. Who is not drinking Kool-Aid?
It's delicious. It's affordable. So yeah, I think, what I mean by that is, when you enter an organization, when you're internal, like I am, and not in the agency world, you really have to take on the mentality of not only the organization, the OEM that you are employed by or whatever, but your customer as well. Like you need to put forward a message and also truly believe it. And so I think what I'm getting at there is, you need to find that sweet spot where your marketing has authenticity and that you can, as a marketer, embody that authenticity in a way that is compelling to your audience. I think it's very easy to get into a formulaic mindset with the way that we communicate to people, especially with the way that we can use generative tools now that essentially will give us 1,000 different templates that we might want. But none of those templates are going to have our personal voice or our personal perspective in there. And so I think, you need to bring yourself into the organization in that way. And, to that end, believe in what you're selling and then evangelize it like a true believer.
What do you suppose keeps people from doing that? Why aren't we drinking the Kool-Aid? It's in a giant pitcher. There's ice in it. It's a hot day. It's so yummy. What are we doing? We're sitting there staring at it. Like, why aren't more people, practicing this?
Well, I think it comes down to the entire approach of the organization, right?
Yeah.
Like, if your organization is thinking of ways to sort of evade gatekeepers rather than essentially conquering them with fine products and fine services, I think that's the approach. And I think there's a great deal of, what you might call pragmatic marketing that walks sort of a delicate line of giving people authentic information and giving people aspirational information. And I think, especially in the economy we're in now, so much marketing has become puffery without calling itself that,
Totally.
And so it really comes down to working with your product owner, your service owner, or whatever, to hone your solution towards the authentic value that your customer is finding in it rather than the value that you imagine that it may have.
Man, I hallucinate more than my own AI does sometimes with that,
Right.
like, dang. But the tricks you're calling out, the evading gatekeepers, like, it makes total sense. If you even have to say that, it's like putting on the black hat, the wizard black hat, and you're like, oh yeah, this is totally cool. Well, is it though? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, here's an example I'll give. I've recently got a email that was outreach that was automated, and the email was like, "Hey, I'm, let's say QWERTY. I'm an AI assistant. I'm helping this person automate their outreach." And that email landed with me in a way that that respected my intelligence, right? Prior to that, I've gotten well, think of it this way. I've gotten like a dozen emails that are essentially that exact same thing, but they're pretending to be the sender. And I can tell, anyone can tell at this point when they're reading something that's been obviously AI generated and then
Mhm.
someone's real name has been slapped on it. And that's something that I would call, I would put in that category of trying to trick people into your service or your offering. And as a person who is in a buyer position frequently and is constantly being approached by buyers, if you're going to try to trick me into talking to you, I'm going to write you off immediately
Yeah.
as someone who is not confident in your own product offering because you think you need to undertake this deception with me. Um, and uh, it's something that anyone can see through at this point. And so if you're sending messages like that, you're basically condescending to everyone you work with
Yeah.
and assuming that they can't see through the ruse, which is essentially what it is. So, I'm really about authenticity in marketing. And I think that's, part and parcel with believing in the organization and what it's doing, whether that's a service or a product.
What if you can't? What if your product sucks?
That's a great question. I don't know that any marketer can solve that problem. That's like if I would imagine that if someone can figure that out and have like a turnkey answer to that question, then they'll be first in line for any marketing position going forward.
For real. No, and I know it's kind of tongue in cheek, but like I almost think the answer is like just like leave. To your point, it's like so critical. It's so critical to you that you have to believe in what you're doing that I mean what life's too short to be hawking things that you need to trick people to even consider.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think um, you know, th- the assumption that everyone else isn't dealing with the same level of like filters and understandings that you are is an insulting assumption. And so
Yeah.
it is about humility and authenticity in terms of how you approach your customers, and knowing that they have all the same tools you do in terms of the internet and search and AI. Like they can get up to speed on your domain very quickly now just by asking a few key questions of any AI.
Yeah. I mean, I the email example you bring up is like it's so telling. And it's like, do you start your first encounter with someone, their first view of you by lying to them, you know?
Right. Exactly.
It and I think what gets me, and you probably have seen these emails where the first sentence isn't that truthful statement saying, "Hey, this is an app," and but
Yeah.
it's an app. I'm being honest. It's like, "Hey, I love what you're doing over
Yes.
at this company or whatnot."
Right.
You know what's crazy? I've got a couple things listed. One is like I do some ski patrol during the winter time. So I
Okay.
I love when the spammers can't figure out multiple roles going on.
Oh,
So
sure.
I love when they're like, I love what you're doing over there at Cratchit Mountain Ski Resort. Could you use this data integration software? And I'm like, you busted. But like, but that idea of like, don't say it if it's not true. Like, if you don't know what I'm doing over here, don't say that you love what I'm doing over here. To your
Right.
point, so condescending and disingenuous.
Yeah.
Um,
And I've done podcast outreach because, as you've noted, I've co-host the one that we have at
hell
Filament
yeah.
Games and have guested on others. And we also, we like to bring our thought leaders in our organization into other podcasts.
Nice.
And so when we're doing that kind of outreach, my mandate was always like, if you're going to say to them, "Oh, we listened to your episode on X and we really liked it," you better listen to it. Like, do not tell people that you listen to their podcast without listening to it, because if they ask you one question, you will be exposed. Like, all it takes is a single question. "Oh, what did you like?" It's like, you're done right there.
Which guest did you see? You know, which
Exactly. Yeah. "Oh, what part of the conversation did you enjoy?" It's like, so, So even then I was like, just do the diligence
Yeah.
of, even if you cherry pick, just go and listen, scan it, skim it, listen
Yeah.
to a few minutes here and there, just come up with something intelligent to say about it that shows that you're not just lying to people to get through the door. Because especially when you do volume style outreach like that, where you're cranking, hundreds of people or whatever, or hundreds of outbound messages, it becomes very tempting to be like, well, I'm just going to fudge it this time and say I listened to it, but maybe I didn't.
Yeah, don't do it, man.
Um,
That's the time you're gonna get busted. Good.
exactly. Yeah. And then your credibility is shot
Shot.
entirely.
Just unsubscribe yourself at that point, you know? And like,
Yeah.
so what do you, let's say you've got the product, it's got the chops, you want to create this content. Like, how do you go about doing it? How do you go about drinking your own Kool-Aid?
That's a great question. I think, any organization that I start at,
Yeah.
my first objective is to meet with every discipline leader at that organization. So, that can be department heads, that can be business units, that can be, every organization is structured differently,
Yeah.
so that could be like, the different, industries that organization serves, or it could be the different pr parts of the process for the one thing that they do, whatever that may be. Um, you want to get a diversity of perspectives because you're going to find friction among those perspectives, which is really interesting to dig into when you're starting to, codify and then relay what an organization does,
Yeah.
because that's the goal when you first started a company like this and you're doing internal marketing. And I would argue even, an agency should have this mindset too. Like an agency should aspire to essentially mimic or match anything an internal marketing person can do. And of course, that's not necessarily going to be possible because an internal marketing person is like steeped in it and totally immersed versus someone who's external and providing a service from a distance.
Totally.
But it should be the aspiration, I think, to approximate it as much as you can. Um, so yeah, to that end, I think, you meet with everyone, you get all the perspectives, you get, you ask them the same questions. Like you come up with something like, what do you think we do here? What is the greatest value that we have? What customer struggles do you see routinely? Things like that that will surface, patterns across all the different people that you're talking to. You're essentially doing like market research internal to your organization to
Mm.
uncover that organization's perspective on itself and its own services. So then once you've got all that information, you synthesize it, and then you bring all those people together in a room and you come to a consensus around that synthesis. So like, that's like the first thing I would do if I'm like joining a new organization. I'm like, how do I drink this Kool-Aid? First, I need to find the Kool-Aid and I need to put it in a big pitcher and stir it all
Yeah.
together, you know?
A giant,
Um,
like fill the bathtub, right?
yeah,
Like a college party from the 80s
right.
full
Exactly.
of Everclear and grape soda.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully not that, intoxicating.
Yeah, and that's not
But
prescriptive to those listening. I do not accept responsibility for what you may
yeah,
find out.
yeah,
Yeah,
stay out of the marketing bathtub.
but I get it, man. So you're getting the, because everyone's gonna have a different approach, different thought, and you're gonna find out, are we similar? Are we different? But let's get everyone aligned eventually. But at least for now, discover. Yeah.
For an example, the organization I'm at, which is a
Yeah.
game developer, we make educational games.
Right.
And this is a service that we provide to clients. It's something we've done on grant basis, and it's also something that we've done for ourselves, like self-publishing games for consumers. So, like you say, we've run that full gamut of beta, whatever. Um, and so in our studio, it's split up by discipline. We have engineers who do the coding. We have artists who make the art. We have UX and UI people that make the interfaces and build the user experience. We have game designers who build all the mechanics and design the narrative of the game. And then we have quality assurance, people who play the game and try to break it and find the things that are wrong with it, test it against the different devices that we're shipping to and all that stuff. And so, those people all have totally different perspectives on the process because they touch a different part of it and they all collaborate, of course. But they're responsible for such entirely different things in the assembly line that they have really various perspectives on like the greatest value of what we provide and also like what we need to emphasize when we're marketing. So that's just an example from my own career, but I think any organization has a structure like that you can like kind of skim this information out of.
So That's the core recipe. Where do you go from there? What's next?
So from there, I mean, we're kind of getting into the stuff like the structures that I build around content marketing at that point.
Yeah, yeah. What is that?
So you want to have an editorial calendar of some kind. Um, and I should take a step back and say that content marketing is the primary focus at Filament Games, and there's a reason for that, which is that we make these complicated, long longitudinal contracts with clients to make complex game experiences. And so this is not a commodity sale. This is not a high volume, like, let's get as many ads out about paper towel as we can, so that we can get the 5% of humanity that always needs paper towels right now. This, there's not 5% of humanity that needs a learning game made for their portfolio right now.
Right.
It's folks who, it's a rarefied group of people, but they certainly exist. And, we've been around for 2 decades working with them. And so when you're looking at a purchase like that, you want to be, or when anyone's looking at a purchase like that, it's not going to be made on outbound marketing tactics. Like you're not going to open up an email in your inbox and be like, "Ooh, just what I needed, complicated game-based learning development services. I think I'll drop $250,000 on this." But like,
Right.
it's a completely unrealistic scenario, just like if you play it through in your head. When you're making an expenditure like that, your approach is going to be research. You're always going to go research it. And so we emphasize and focus entirely almost on inbound marketing because we want to be there when people are researching our domain. So this gets back to why you need an editorial calendar, because you need to own that conversation around your domain, and you need to be relentless in talking about it. And so the best way to do that is to create a structure that you can then sort of align yourself to and almost automate yourself against. So that's what the editorial calendar provides. You
Okay.
take all the insights. So again, using the example of like, if I go through all those different disciplines at Filament and I interview people and I get fantastic information about the methodologies we have within each of those disciplines, now I've got months of content. I could do a month on our QA services and atomize that from all the different angles that you can look at it from. Like, what does it mean to do QA for Chromebooks? What does it mean to do QA for tablets? What does it mean to do QA for schools? What does it mean to do QA for nursing homes? Like, this is, there's a million different angles. And likewise, I can do that with art, engineering, and so forth. And so you take this information that you've got and you build it against a structured calendar. And this is the kind of hard and obnoxious part, you then relentlessly deliver on what you've put into that calendar. And ideally, you've put a brisk pace of content in there.
What window do you like? Plan it for the year kind of thing, or?
That's a great question.
Hey, marketing leaders, it's Amanda here from Ringmaster B2B Podcasting. In today's market, B2B buying is built on one thing: trust. And there's no better way to build that trust than through a podcast that builds connection. At Ringmaster, we help you launch and grow shows that will amplify your brand and can help drive real demand. The best part? We handle all the heavy lifting so you can focus on the big picture. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast for your brand or taking your existing one to the next level, visit ringmaster.com to chat and book a call.
I generally plan for the year, and I consider that to be aspirational. It doesn't always work out that's going to end up being what it is. And there can be a variety of reasons for that. Maybe one of your months was really dedicated to a topic that was like near and dear to the heart of like the previous presidential administration, but maybe not this one. And so there's like different opportunities and funding landscapes for you to approach. And now that previous topic is irrelevant because of how fundamentally the funding landscape has changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's, something that has happened quite recently, is like the world of public education funding and the world of private education funding have really swirled around quite a bit. A lot of pieces have been moving. And so it's like, well, how do we change our message to meet these new forms of demand and these new areas of concern? That would be like one example of how you kind of have to, stay on top of the editorial world and the topical world, and making sure that you're aligning yourself to what's happening now. Because if you, set an October editorial focus, and then by the time you get to October, it's totally irrelevant. And that in today's world is completely possible. You just better be ready to write about something else that month or talk about something else that month.
Do a little pivot. Yeah. Yeah. Don't get so locked into it. Good
Yeah.
call.
So it's kind of like a quarterly thing where you like reevaluate it. And of course, like as you get to the months, I do break it up by month just as a matter of form, but that's not, I think it's not necessarily mandatory to do it that way. You can do it you could break it into all kinds of different phases, I think. And you could also even be like campaign minded about it. You don't have to think about it as like, well, April is this month. You can be like, well, starting in Q1, I'm doing this campaign and I'm carrying it through to Q3. And there's going to be a large piece of content for that campaign, which will be my big rock. And then I'm going to break that down into smaller pieces and atomize those across a bunch of different integrated marketing channels. Just as an example.
I like the modularity of being able to, maybe we need to shift this month around. We have an event coming. Let's do that. Or, hey, ABM. Oh, that's perfect timing, right? Or just, being flexible and just understanding. Aspirational. Well said on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you want to put a structure forward to yourself so you have a goal to be moving towards. Like you should always kind of create that structure for yourself, especially if you're a marketing leader, because I mean, at least in my organization, there's not a person creating my structure. I have to create it for me and my team, and for anyone else who participates in marketing cross-functionally. Like it's all on me. And I think there's a lot of folks who might listen to this show are probably at the top level of marketing in their organization. And so, yeah, it's really good to just create that discipline and structure around yourself, and have it be something that you can almost do on automatic. It's like, insofar as I can, I try to make things like brainless to do, where it's like, I just have to like plug it in. And I don't have to like have the long phase of consideration before I get to execute on things. Which, I would love more time for consideration. I think anyone would. But the world moves very fast, especially in marketing. So.
Yeah, it does. Wait, how do you, what's the best way to then translate that content calendar into bringing it to real life? Mix that Kool-Aid up, put that powder in.
For us, we've got a blog that has kind of been the core of our content marketing engine. And we've been putting out 2 articles a week on there since August 2015. So really, really steady. And the SEO is pretty strong. As far as I've seen, if you search educational game developer on most search engines or even in most AI tools, you're going to find Filament Games, which is of course the goal, is to saturate the space and be as findable as we possibly can. But I think that to me is definitely an approach that has an expiration date on it. Or at least needs to be supplemented by other things in the marketing mix at this point. I think like video marketing is becoming such a prominent form of consumption and information exchange that if you're not doing anything around there, then you're probably missing the boat a little bit in terms of who you could be reaching. And so we're building out in that realm. Being a small team, it's slow going, and we're launching a new website at the same time. So there's a lot of different things happening a little bit slowly at once, but that's the nature of being in a small team. But I think, the way I would do it is like turn it into a format that you feel you can deliver on reliably. So for us, that's blog articles. It doesn't have to be blog articles. What we're also finding is that when we do an hour-long live stream where we just kind of like play one of our games from our portfolio and talk about the design that went into it, the development process, that then becomes something that we can very easily split up into short form video, which gets lots of traction. So I think in terms of like your marketing mix, it's going to be down to like the capacities that you have in your organization. Like we're fortunate enough to be a games organization. So I have interesting things to stream, like that's like gameplay is relatively interesting to watch, compared to just like a bunch of people in a room yapping at each other, which, many podcasts can be. And it is indeed what we're doing right now when I think about it. But it's like I think, and in an equally viable way to go about it, it's just like you want to lean into your organization's strengths. And so, you know, Connect to Market podcast has like amazing production value. Like this, these are great
Why,
shows to
thank you.
watch. Yeah, yeah. So it's like they're very consumable, and I think that's the awesome advantage that you all have. And I think, um, any organization could think about what are our strengths and how can we apply them to marketing. So do we have a particularly personable individual who has like, you can tell they've kind of always wanted to be a content creator, and maybe they'd like to be a little content creator for you, like that's,
Yeah.
there's plenty of people like that out in the world who are like, oh yeah, I'd love to get on the podcast for our company. Like there's lots of people like that. So, pull your talent internally and find out what bench you have in terms of who wants to get up and talk. But I do think if I'm going to kind of bring it back to a tactic that I think is like the most traction or has the most traction, I think it's obviously short form video right now. So what I would do is try to take that editorial calendar and turn it into conversations or explainers or case studies, like whatever video format you're comfortable producing, and then break that down into short form video for discoverability purposes, because that stuff circulates to a ridiculous degree compared to any other format.
Because it's real, and it's people, and they're
Yep.
talking, and they're sharing, or they're experiencing this.
And it's being delivered inside of a system that has very effectively trained people to want that short form content. Like it's like it's very watchable, right? Like everyone will everyone knows the experience of like, oh, I think I'll just look at my phone, and then you look up and it's 2 hours later and you're like, ugh, what have I done?
Yeah.
And so I think to an extent, it's like, while I don't necessarily celebrate that as a status quo, I think short form video is delivered to people within that system. And so they're more amenable and they're more open to new information, and they'll engage more with something that entertains or informs, And so I think that's the other thing is like when you're making this stuff, you have to try and be at least as informative as possible, if not entertaining. I think entertaining is a tall order for just like random people. But I think informative anyone can do. So
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. Well, dude, my next question really is like, who are you? Who are you? How do you know these things? Can you take me back in time, like little you days? Did you know you're going to be working with a game company, making podcasts and lives and creating content calendars? What would you want to do? What were you like?
Well, that's a great question. I studied writing in school. I went into like creative writing and comms, and went to UW-Madison. And while I was there, I was like, I would like to apply this skill set to a marketing role in a games company. Was actually my goal at 18.
Damn.
When I opted into that.
Dude,
Yeah.
you
So
pointed at the bleachers. You're like, it's going this way.
I did. And the funny thing is that like I got it there by like kind of tripping over it and kicking it that direction instead of hitting it with a bat, It was like one of those situations where I didn't work in games originally. When I first graduated, I worked at an architecture and engineering firm in their marketing department. And it was an interesting place, actually fascinating place to work, and really opened my eyes to just the complexity of the physical world that we're in, when you start having to write the quals about the bridges and the airports that they made, you come to realize how much thought goes into each bridge and airport.
Yeah.
Which, as someone in their early 20s, I was like, this is actually really cool. So did that for a while. And then that was like right at the height of the recession. So got kind of hit by that wave and spent some time wandering the unemployment desert. And then wound up at an organization called the Douglas Stewart Company, which is an educational, like an ed tech distributor.
Okay.
And they're local to Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm based. And they kind of do everything in education. They serve K-12 up to higher ed. So everything from pencils to antivirus software, like anything that a school needs, they distribute.
Wow.
And then they also have this whole like college bookstore business that they also sell into. It's a really cool company, and they've been around for over 100 years. They got started selling slide rulers, which is crazy. But
That is crazy. Dang.
yeah, but yeah, that these days they continue to serve education. And so when I was there, I specialized in educational software. So and particularly, I worked a lot on Adobe. Like I worked on the Adobe Student Suite. And helped resellers sell sell these products to their customers. It was kind of like a B2B to B thing that we were doing. And then so that gave me a working knowledge of like educational technology, the terminology that was like common at the time, things like the flipped classroom and BYOD and one-to-one, like all this stuff that was kind of emerging with the proliferation of like affordable personal computing devices, which of course, like that's been around for decades, but the Chromebook changed things very dramatically in education, being basically a mouse and keyboard that you can spend, $300 on, and give to students. So that changed things a lot. Anyway, with all that terminology, I was able to, on a kind of a random moment, I saw this opening for a marketing lead at Filament Games, and was able to speak fairly intelligently to all those different, things that were happening in the classroom around educational technology. And that was able to get me in the door there. So, and I've been there now for over 10 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So at Filament, I've been doing all kinds of stuff. We started where we were selling games directly to K-12. I did a lot of outreach work where I would work with like schools and the community to create like game development and professional development events where I could connect students to game development pros. Cause a lot of students love the idea of making games because they love video games. And then you explain to them what it's like to make a video game, and they're like, oh, that's a lot of work.
Never.
You're like, it's nothing like playing a game, unfortunately.
You're front loading the work into the work. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, so we did that for a while, and then I did licensing at Filament for a while. So I would like recruit vendors into our storefront that we were selling into K-12. Then there was a phase, which is still kind of underway, where I do a lot of grant writing. So I've done grant writing to the National Science Foundation. We've closed, funding for titles for ourselves and for our clients through grant programs that are provided by government agencies like Department of Education and National Science Foundation.
Wow.
And that's been something we've been pretty successful in. And yeah, these days I'm just working on the website and the video stuff, but yeah, that's sort of the background. That's who I am.
Dude, we're a wild journey, man. I got a question for you, a bit of a hypothetical question though.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I think so.
It's like a quest, all right. I may or may not have a time machine here in New Hampshire. So you come visit, we get some lobster, some beer, and we use a time machine. It may be in the backyard covered in a tarp, just putting it out there. But the particular kind of time machine, so you go back in time, you get to meet yourself 4 days after that English degree, creative writing, Brandon. And maybe you just recovered from those parties and everything, but now you get to go talk to that version of you. What do you tell yourself?
Yeah. Probably jump into that 401k a little bit earlier, bud,
Oh yeah. Buy Apple.
Get started a few years early.
Get a little Tesla shares in there.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe something like that. But no, I think probably, I guess if I was going to give them advice to try to evolve along with the industry, that's probably what I would point out, is just like the mediums or the media that you are working with now, the forms of consumption that you're familiar with now are going to be almost entirely irrelevant in 20 years. So stay on pace with how things are changing and how people communicate, because even the idea of a podcast being something that you consume through a specific Apple provided device, that's what it was 20 years ago. And now it's something you do through, an internet website like this, and it's totally different. Totally different.
It's not going to just stop today, right? It's going to keep going. So
exactly. So yeah, I think it's like I definitely, I don't know, maybe you can reflect, or maybe this is resonant with you too, but I remember back then thinking that like we've kind of arrived in the future, and it's like thinking about where we are now with like personal smartphone devices and AI, and just like how, you can just like pull up pretty much full HD video anywhere you are in the world, compared to waiting 10 minutes for a JPEG to get finished downloading or whatever back then
Seriously.
to change your wallpaper to Star Fox or whatever. Um, so it's just, it's the world continues to change, and it's going to keep changing faster and faster. So hold on to your hat.
Hold on to your hat. Well
Yeah.
said, sir. Hey, how do people get in touch with you if they want to reach out and say hi or ask you some marketing questions? What's a good place to connect?
You can reach out to me at bpitser@filamentgames.com, and I'm happy to talk about marketing or learning games or any of the weirdo stuff that we've done in CSR. Got Roblox games out there with millions of plays that we've done with partners like Niagara Bottling. So it's just like, it's a fascinating space to be in. And of course, we're very grateful to be occupying such a unique spot in the economy.
Yeah, but man, you have this thing figured out. Dude, thank you so much for coming on here. I feel
course.
like I feel like I kind of already want to get you on the second episode to talk more about, you just geek out on podcasts. We can geek out on a bunch of things, but like, man, the editorial calendar, just skipping the tricks, right? And just going for it and like promoting something worth promoting. This has been awesome, dude. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This has been great fun.
Hell yeah. And for those listening, if you learned something, I freaking know you did, because I literally have notes over here, front and back. Then share this with someone else. Like, who needs to hear it? Maybe you bump into someone with terrible content. Send them a link to this episode and let them know what's up. But again, man, Brandon, thank you again.
Absolutely. Yeah, no problem. This is great.
All right, everybody. This was a crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Connect to Market Pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connecttomarket.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasting communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.